Welcome to the Bladtcast. Joining me now is Mitch Perry of the Mitch Perry Group, and so many other things that it would take the whole interview to list each and every one of them. But we'll talk about some of those things. He's also got a great new Christmas song that's the sentiment of which we can all enjoy at this time. Very Merry Christmas. Welcome back to the show, Mitch.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, talk about how this song came about. I guess you didn't sit down and write it just now. It's actually something you had worked on a while ago, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I'd gotten a piano in my house for the first time in a long time, back around 2007. And yeah, like most of my favorite songs that I've written, this was one that just came about where I was banging on some chords, having fun, not really thinking about too much. The song takes shape in your head, and it was like right away with the chords, I went, wow, if I ever wanted to write a Christmas song, this is it.
Yeah.
And then upon doing that, I mean, literally, a very Merry Christmas came into the chorus, and that was it. So the song was written again pretty quickly, and I went in and tracked it with some friends, and we put it out. It didn't come out anything like what it should have, and it was a thing that I thought had come and gone, and then I was playing it on the piano again recently for a friend, and they went, why are you not recording this? This
Yeah.
is a hit. This is great." And I'm like, "Well, I thought so, but it sounded like garbage the last time we recorded it." So we went in and gave it a second a shot, and I'm glad we did. I mean, saying we went in was a bit of a misnomer. In these COVID times, there's
Sure.
nothing like a regular session. It was more like, I played the piano, sent it to Tal, who played the drums, who sent it back to me. I played the guitar and the bass, then had Dan add bass over mine, and so on and so on. So what's really funny is none of the musicians involved really knew what the end result was going to be until it was finished, because we were all doing it one at a time. So.
Right. And I mean, even pre-COVID, I think a lot of music gets made that way these days anyway. So I'm sure everybody was comfortable with that sort of
Now,
approach to it.
yeah, that's not the way I like to do it, though.
No, no, no. Yeah, definitely. And I've talked to musicians who have been in studio, but in a way where it's like, well, this guy's down the hall in that room, and so it's like they can hear each other. They're in the same building, but they're actually not in the same like open air studio space.
There's a thing. There's a thing. There's a combustion that happens, and it's not a tangible thing. I mean, you can record your drums, you can record your bass, you can record your guitars, line up everything, or even play in the feel in the pocket, where you want it. And it's all great, and it's all correct, and anything I'm saying here, nothing's right or wrong. This is
Yeah,
all
sure. Of
just
course not. Yeah.
different opinions, obviously, different perspectives. Um, but for me, there's a thing that happens when you have two musicians playing at the same time together. You pulse together, and it's different than if you're trying to line up with playing along to a track. When you're all in the same room. One of the things I did for Music Box is it was very important to me that all the tracks, we never used just drum tracks and then added bass, and then added guitar. We rehearsed the songs live
Hmm.
and played them live in the studio as we would like at a regular show, knowing we would probably add overdubs and maybe change parts here and there, but still the pulse and the whole way we played the song had more of a live feel than if we were just playing to a track that had been recorded to a click, because we were all reacting to each other at that moment. And by the way, I didn't use a click when we recorded the album either. I
Right.
wanted the songs, to breathe. I feel that's missing in music today. I mean, yes, it's all perfect, but For me, music's a living, breathing thing, and it doesn't have to be locked into one tempo from the start of a song to the finish. Depending on the excitement of the part or whatever, it can shift.
Right, and exactly. And I think, being in person in some way, it's something that, those of us as music fans, we get to see more in person. There's sort of that eye contact between the guitar player and the bassist. And it's like, hang on, I'm going to do a little bit more of this, or like, okay, now let's get into that. And, if you guys are all recording it separately, there is none of that, like, oh, watch this.
I mean, just like us talking right now. How exciting would this be if you recorded all your parts and I wrote out all my answers and
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Yeah.
how silly does that sound?
Yeah, no, it's a great comparison, and I think that a lot of print media, they do sort of have their conversations that way. You'll hear about people just email back and forth, and it's like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess that works, but when you're having a conversation like this, it's much more natural. If you think of something, you don't have to write down like, oh, I don't want to forget about it. So yeah, I can see how it worked for this song, but this is obviously not your ideal way to record. Let's talk a little bit more about the song itself. Let's start with the vocals on the song, which I think are great. And of course, the song is called Very Merry Christmas.
Well, the vocals. It's a Christmas song, so obviously that means we're kind of leaving Rush Waters or anything crazy musical. For me, it's all about the vocal,
Yeah.
and because it's a Christmas song, it's a simple vocal. And as I told Kara, if you know her singing from Music Box, I mean, she can sing Aretha with the best of them. I mean,
Right.
this is a girl with a lot of soul, and the melody line is, "Can you feel it in the sunshine?" Not a whole lot to it, and it's really simple in the beginning, and the whole part, it was like taking on personas, and Kara did that. We had Randy Scholes, who had been filling in for Keith England. Keith has been quarantining with the COVID thing, and we had some commitments that we had with that I wanted to perform at in Vegas, and Keith wasn't able to make that show, so Randy came in and filled in. And while we were in the studio, he came in and added the little answer and call in the vocal. And funnily enough, the biggest coincidence is Randy was also a singer for Ronnie Montrose, as was Keith England. So
Oh, wow.
that lineage stays complete, of course, with Dan McNay playing bass on this track. So but getting back to the vocals, we had Kara kind of, she came in and sang the lead. We had Randy answer those chorus bits, and I had done some work with Joe Retta where he kindly helped me out stacking all those backgrounds, the beautiful backgrounds that you hear. And
Hmm.
I'm a fan of all the old Beach Boys stuff. I mean, Pet Sounds is one of my required listening records, and I used to love all the old Beach Boys, records. When they get to their Christmas songs and do their standards and whatnot. And especially Phil Spector and the stuff he did with the Crystals and the Ronettes and all that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because it's, it's not in the style, but it sort of reminds me of the way you feel when you listen to one of those Ronettes Christmas songs. And we hear them every year. We have local, Christmas all day stations. We have them on satellite radio. And so it's, in the best way possible, it was reminiscent of, again, not exactly the sound, but it's like, oh yeah, this is like hearing the Ronettes. And those
You
are some of the most iconic Christmas songs that that really live on, I think.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for saying what you just did, because that's exactly what I was hoping to accomplish. Is I certainly wanted to evoke those memories and those feelings. I mean, you know, that meant Christmas to me as a kid. and I wanted to bring that back. But I didn't want to do it by Xerox copying it.
No, right, exactly. Which,
I,
a lot of times, you'll hear, I don't know. I mean, each Christmas you only get so many new songs. For the most part, people are like, okay, well, here's my spin on this. Some of them are very interesting. Some of them you feel like, well, I don't know why you bothered. It sounds like a less good version of the original. I mean, from rock and just contemporary singers, you'll get an interesting spin on it, but you really do get so few. So that's why I think some of the, the heyday of I guess early ish rock and roll, like the 60s and 70s, you got great stuff. Like you mentioned the Beach Boys, and Chuck Berry, Run, Run, Rudolph, which I don't know how many
oh,
times I've heard that covered, but that's just, it's just like, how much fun is that song,
oh, yeah, no.
and the Beach Boys again have those great Christmas songs, and it's like the key to it, I think, is if your Christmas song doesn't seem like a throwaway, if it's like, oh, this could have been on Pet Sounds, this could have been on,
Yeah,
anything.
no,
It's
well,
like if you put this
I
much
feel
time
that
into it. Yeah.
I feel that way about every piece of music played. I mean, when we're in the studio and I'm producing, one thing I try and explain to, this applies to every instrument, to every singer, to every, whatever you're doing. There is no such thing as a wasted note. Every note is as important as the next one. I mean, if you go in there with that attitude, you're going to get a much more concise, much clearer performance, and you that's
Yeah.
about.
No, I mean, that's why I think some of your, your best artists, their B-sides or bonus tracks, those are also great songs,
Oh,
and it's
absolutely.
just like, especially in the old days, it's like, well, we had to put out 10, so we had 30, but we couldn't put them all in,
Yeah,
so yeah, I think you can tell when something's like, okay, well, we've got 20 more minutes of studio time. Let's do a Christmas song before we get out of here. I
yeah,
think
no,
that
exactly. When the record company wanted a Christmas song. I mean, for the record, my favorite Christmas song, even though I love all the Phil Spector stuff, is "So This Is Christmas." "Happy Christmas, War's Over," the
yeah.
John Lennon thing. And to me, that's just a brilliant song. Forget the fact that it's about Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, just
It's
the
amazing.
the fact that the message is, just the war is over. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
parenthetical in the title, and it's interesting because every Christmas you'll of course hear that, and Paul's got the wonderful Christmas Time from Wings, and yet Ringo and George never dipped into the Christmas well, unless I'm missing one. But there's still time for Ringo.
Yeah, yeah, Ringo could get it, and who knows? Well, maybe Danny's got something
It in the vault.
in the
Yeah.
vault. But I'll tell you, for me, George makes up with "All Things Must Pass."
Yeah.
That record was so great, and it was Phil Spector, so that's the Christmas album.
Yeah, yeah, just that's a Christmas present. Just listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it's funny because so many, every year when you're listening to like the Christmas stations and stuff, yeah, there's always the handful of like, oh, I forgot about so and so. But then it's like, oh yeah, of course, like in addition to all of Bruce Springsteen's songs, you always hear that Santa Claus is coming to town, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
and
Which I want to admit we totally stole the Glock parts from.
I love that. Uh, and and it's just like you can, and that I mean, it seems like that's a live recording, and it's like it seems like everybody's having fun, and then a lot of times your Christmas songs come off as fun, and it does transcend genres. That's what I like about sort of the Christmas stations. You'll get the pop songs, of course. You're going to hear Mariah Carey at least once an hour, but you're also going to get Chuck Berry and the Beach Boys and some of the other things we've talked about.
Yeah.
And not to undersell one of my favorites, of course, which is the Kinks' Father Christmas, which doesn't have the most upbeat message, but I always like to make sure I hear that at least once.
Awesome.
So there was something you said earlier that I wanted to backtrack to. So the last time I talked to you was very early in lockdown quarantine times. I think I talked to you in like April, but you referenced, I think, that you played live in Vegas. Was that some point in the last few months
Yeah,
or?
improv. Basically,
Okay.
what had happened is there's an award show called the Las Vegas Producers Honors Awards, that's put on every November. And this year they were nice enough to award us. I got Outstanding Producer Production of the Year for Music Box, and they gave us Video of the Year for Believe. Unfortunately, twice the shows were canceled
Right. Of course. Yeah.
because of what was going on. And so, what ended up happening is they found a place in Pahrump where they could put on, I mean, we were in an 1,150 capacity ballroom with 50 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, talk about social distance.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. It was like playing a sound check, and I'm going, the show's a success. It's a sold out crowd.
Yeah.
But we've had bigger crowds at sound check. But it was a great chance. I knew we were going to do it. I knew it was going to be done safe. I mean, literally, the closest tables to us were like 30 feet away from the stage. So
Right.
it was done properly, and I have to thank Al Bowman and Brian Scott and the guys who all put this show on for doing it that way, because they made it. Obviously, it's with everything going on, you have to take everything seriously, and you can't be cavalier about doing what you want just because you want. So
Yeah.
uh, that was a real important part to me, that we were able to accomplish this. But that we were was one thing. The other thing, and I got to say, um, I knew we were doing this a couple of months in advance, or that there might be a chance we were going to
Sure. Yeah.
do it. So I wanted my band to be ready because, let's face it, none of us has played in a year. And even if the Lakers all got together to shoot hoops, if they've been sitting down for 9 months, they ain't going to be that impressive.
Yeah.
And and it's the same for us. So we've been rehearsing a couple of times a week for the last couple of months, and obviously, like I said, we lost Keith. He didn't want to venture out, which I totally understand. And Randy was nice enough to come in and fill for him. The same thing with Dave Schultz on keyboards. We had John Greathouse come out, and I was completely fortunate because we didn't have Tal Bergman, who's one of our secret weapons. Um, I was incredibly blessed to get Gary Ferguson on drums. And, Gary played with Hughes Thrall, with Gary Moore, with Eddie Money, with the New Radicals. I mean,
Wow. Yeah.
seriously, seriously great drummer. And so, anyway, the band had rehearsed for a couple months. So it was the first time we'd gotten to play these songs, the originals, and step into them with both feet forward, where you're not wondering, oh, am I going to screw up this next chord? I mean, we would really put a, uh, put a good set together, and it just felt so great to play again. I mean, it was almost a tease because, obviously, this is not going to be happening this often,
Yeah.
and oh man, it just reminded me of how much I missed it, because
Right. I mean, and you were talking about how there were 50 people, but if you're able to play and there's 5 people, it's like, yeah, but we still get to be on stage and play. I can see. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people sort of look at it that way in terms of just actually seeing live music. I know over the summer you had some examples of, there were bands that were able to play outdoors a lot more, especially in parts of the country where they seemed to feel like it would be reasonably safe. So yeah, but I think we're entering a time where that's a lot less common, but I guess the flip side of that is that there's a vaccine going around. So I think that those of us who want to be optimistic and maybe get a little ahead of ourselves, we, at least for me, I try to tell myself that well, I'll see live music sometime this summer, even if it's the end of the
Well,
summer.
no, it's interesting that you bring that up because like I said, I was very, very concerned about playing the show and that I wanted it done right. I
Sure.
wasn't taking it lightly or being cavalier about it. And one of the reasons, and people like from the beginning of lockdown, oh man, when are they going to let us play again? And it's
Yeah.
like, who cares? I'm going, it doesn't matter. We can't do what we're supposed to do,
Yeah.
if we play right now. Everything that constitutes a successful show is exactly what constitutes a bad
Yeah.
COVID spread
Yeah,
event.
your list of your list of no-nos. It's like all the things you need for a great concert. Yeah,
Yeah. So having said that, until we know, and this is down the road, until we know the answers to all those things, you can't even really seriously think about how we're going to do this in any normal way.
yeah,
And what I was referring to so much is referring to about the buzz of playing wasn't so much for the audience because it was so spread and I couldn't see anyone anyway from the stage. It wasn't that. And obviously that's a whole nother thing that we're missing because there's an electricity that happens when you have
sure.
the audience. And that electricity will only happen when we can do it without worrying about any kind of restrictions. But no, the buzz I was talking about was the loud instruments, the band locked in together,
Yeah,
and basically eight of us moving as one organism, which when a band is functioning right, that's what it is. It's one moving thing. And that was just such a blast. And man, have I missed doing it this year.
right. And yeah, so it just reminds you that whenever it is okay to do and it is safe, then it's you'll be ready to go, even if it's for 50 people and 1,100 empty seats again.
Yeah,
Even if
yeah,
that's the way to do it.
absolutely. Count me there.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's if you're letting me buy one, I don't mean you personally. It's if I'm able to buy one of 50 seats in an 1,150 seat venue, I'm like, yeah, you could probably make the price of that ticket something really obscene, and I'll be like, yeah, I think it's worth it to actually get to see something, and also feel safe about it. You referenced that event was to recognize the song Believe. And the last time I talked to you, that was new. I wanted to kind of get a little bit of an update on the reaction to that song. Obviously, that awards, that producers awards, felt that the video in particular was something to acknowledge. What kind of reactions have you gotten generally in the months since that song came out?
We have been so blessed and so honored. I mean, the critical reviews from magazines, right from classic rock, on down. I mean, we've been getting, I think the worst review is an 8 out of a 10. A lot of, album of the year or one of the
Yeah.
best of the year from,
Wow.
multiple people and sources. And we've been getting a lot of love from radio stations that normally are not, you know, doing that. So, I mean, I wish we could be out playing right now
Sure. Yeah, of
because,
course.
I mean, with the kind of response we've received with the record, I'm sure the shows would be, well received, and I know from the way we played the other night, we'd be going over well. And so, it's a little disappointing not being able to really see where we're at with that. But having said that, we've got, a whole bunch of new fans who we did not have at the start of this whole thing. And the truth of the matter for me is when the world starts to open back up again, I don't see that we can't hit reset on this record while we're working on, I mean, I've already got a second record ready, you
Yeah,
know,
there you go.
I mean, so I mean, it's not like this is going away or anything, and we'll get it out there and we'll get touring it at some point. But
Yeah,
I mean,
and I don't know. Then the difference is that people will have had more time to listen and get used to the music. I think early on in lockdown, a lot of musicians we're going to hold off. We don't know when we're going to release anything. We'll wait till next year. But then when to bring up Bruce Springsteen again, he puts out a new album. AC/DC put out a new album. They're like, yeah, just listen to this. Eventually, we'll be able to tour. But boy, are you going to really love these songs by the time you see us.
yeah, well, I mean, that the way it used to happen.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't all about the pre-sales of the album and like, well, we got to be number one in the first week and, worry about that. It was just like, yeah, let's just listen to it and you'll see us when you see us. And yeah, I think it'll be great to be able to get out there. And obviously, there's no shortage of great venues here in Southern California that hopefully they're all able to reopen, obviously safely.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I gotta say, I'd feel bad if I didn't mention the play our home for the last 3 years, the Standing Room. December 20th is their final day. They're closing.
oh, no.
Oh yeah, that's heartbreaking for us. I mean, like I said, that place basically gave birth to the idea of music box. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there have been some high profile, fundraisers. I know like Foo Fighters did a show for the Troubadour, and, you hear about these places that it's hard to imagine. But, if you can't open your doors and you can't sell
yeah,
tickets, obviously there's no money coming in. So yeah, it's sad to hear how many, unfortunately, the Standing Room isn't the only place you're hearing that about.
it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about a couple other things. One more thing is that a couple of months ago, you had this great song out called Saint Valentine, which I didn't talk to you when it came out, but I think it's worth letting people know, after they get their fill of Christmas songs will come January, this will be one to put on repeat. And this is also from the Music Box album with
Yeah,
Believe. Okay.
yeah.
And I was going to say that what I love about the video is sort of the like animated like comic book style with the lyrics. So talk a little bit about that song and the idea for doing the fun like comic book video.
Well, the video idea for that came from our video guy Ian Fisher. He did Believe as well as Saint Valentine. That was all his doing. The song, funnily enough, um, I knew I was doing this album at the time. I happened to be on a plane flying back from London to LA, and I knew that I wanted a kind of Faces, Stone, just kind of rocker tune, mid-tempo rocker. I had nothing written, and remember how I said when talking about the Christmas song, they kind of just the good ones kind of just come.
Yeah, sure.
This thing came to me on a plane. I mean, I wrote the words down, wrote the chords I heard in my head down, hummed a couple of melodies into my iPhone, got home, got off the plane, picked up a guitar, it all worked together, and that's the first song on the record. Saint Valentine. And it's pretty much as it was written on the plane. We didn't change anything up when we were arranging it for the band.
Yeah, you hear that so often about the best songs, and sometimes it's just the most popular songs and the singles. It's like, yeah, we wrote that in 20 minutes or an hour
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah.
I maybe this is pretzel logic, so I don't have to work hard. But but I find if a piece of music is flowing and smooth and goes where it wants to, it shouldn't take a lot of it shouldn't be a dental extraction to get it out of you.
Yeah.
Now and once again, no rights or wrong. I mean, there are people who sit here and spend hours, I mean, years working on their stuff and make exquisite music. I mean, so, however it works is however it works. But for me, I just find going back and listening to a song that kind of came to me like that, I always seem to like it better than when I'm listening back to something I've relentlessly attacked and rewritten and shaped. And when that's not quite right, I can fix it by doing this. Maybe it's just the fact that, my subconscious memory knows what a pain in the ass it was and I don't like it. But
Yeah.
there's just something missing for me about that. But once
Yeah.
again, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, and look, a lot of times, you'll hear about musicians who spend, well, in the old days, millions upon millions of dollars and re-record it like 3 or 4 different times, and then the album comes out, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna listen to the old one because, this didn't have that, that fire to it, that it had. So sometimes, you can tinker too much, the
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing to remember about music. I mean, as more and more information becomes available, we analyze and we compartmentalize and we know how this works together and we know how it all works. But at the end of the day, the people who listen and respond to music, they're not musicians and they don't care about any of it. They just feel it. And it
yeah,
either feels good or it doesn't. And I believe it's even feel more than melodies, more than, obviously it's all important, but I mean, rhythm is the most essential thing uh, look, we wouldn't have rap if it wasn't for rhythm,
it's a
right?
great point. Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously that you think of your favorite rock songs. Why do we love Zeppelin? I mean, yes, everything's great, but man, when Bonham is hitting those drums,
Yeah.
it's Zeppelin. I mean, Motown, all those backbeats, the way those guys play, that's such a big part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, when you think about it, if anybody were to sit down and think of their favorite songs, they probably fell in love with that song in like 10, 15 seconds. Like right away, you're like, oh, yeah, this is a great one, as soon as you hear it. And, you
Absolutely.
know, Zeppelin's a great example, especially when when you have John Bonham on the drums and it's Moby Dick and you're like, yeah, I don't even need any lyrics. I just, I just want to just sit back and, close my eyes and listen to it. The last time that I talked to you, I didn't get around to asking this idea of you have a few different moments in your career where you stepped into some very large shoes. It's because you replaced Randy Rhoads in Quiet Riot, Ingwe Malmsteen and Steeler, and Billy Sheehan and Tallis. Obviously, I don't think any of them at that point were what they would go on to become, but you're basically coming in and replacing, some of the, especially when it comes to Randy and Ingve, these are like people that, are always mentioned in sort of like the Mount Rushmore of guitarists. I was just wondering about coming in and just like, yeah, I'm going to just do my thing and hopefully it works.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing. You mentioned the Randy Rhoads thing. You got to understand when that happened, Randy he had just gone to England to record
Right.
those records. So the only reason I even knew about the gig, I had gotten flown out to LA in January of 1980 to record a record with Alphonso Johnson. We spent about 6 months working on it. And then 2 weeks before its release, the A&R department at Elektra got fired, and we were one of the casualties when our A&R guy went.
Right.
So here I am in LA. I don't want to go back to Florida. I hadn't really networked, so I go to the Guitar Center where I bought my Marshall, and Wayne, the guy who sold it to me, he seemed to be in the middle of everything. So I said, dude, who's looking for a guitar player? And I kid you not. He says, oh, you should join Quiet Riot. Who are they? He says, they're bigger than Van Halen. Sounds good to me. We called up Rudy Sarzo from the
Right.
Guitar Center, and this is the old Guitar Center across the street from where the one is now.
Yeah, sure.
And we call Rudy up, and him and I speak a little bit because he's from, he lived in Miami, and that's where I'd come from. So we had a few mutual acquaintances, and he had left just prior to that to join Angel, but he gave me Kevin's number. I went from the Guitar Center to Kevin's house, played him the acetate, if you remember what those were, test pressings of LPs.
Oh,
That's what
sure.
I had
Yeah.
of Alfonso's album that I did. Played him that, got the gig, and literally went to headline 4 nights at the Starwood with Smile and Snow opening up, and it was I mean, I had no idea who any of these guys were. And Randy, to me, and this is no disrespect, but he was just Randy, the kid in the band I was replacing.
Sure. Yeah.
And Kevin was like worship the ground Randy walked on. So everything anyone else did was wrong. And I
Right.
got so sick of hearing how wonderful Randy was and
Yeah.
how, terrible I was doing that by the time Randy came out, I probably wanted to like anything but,
Oh, that's funny.
which is not the case. I think
Yeah, of
he's
course.
absolutely
But
brilliant. But,
yeah.
it's just funny. You ask, how do you think of these things? It was just like I was replacing some kid at the time.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I go, wow, I was there. And then the Ingve thing is another funny story because I had Mark Edwards, the drummer in Steeler, was a friend of mine, had been staying on my couch right up to when he joined Steeler and moved into the infamous Steeler mansion. Um, I met Ingve the night they picked him up from Sweden. And at that time, I had this great gig that was, it was a great band. It was Randy Castillo on drums and Ralph Mormon, the singer from the Joe Perry Project, Let the
Sure. Yeah.
Music Do the Talking.
Yeah.
A phenomenal band, Dutch Courage. And all 25 of our friends who'd come out to our shows loved it. And Ingve shows up and Steelers like selling out 4 or 5 nights everywhere they play. And Ingve does 9 shows and leaves. And so they asked me to fill in, and that was a little bit of a weird thing because I can kind of play that style. I understand it, but I don't do it well, and it's not what I want to do. I appreciate it, but it's just not my style of playing. So, that was a little bit different as far as having to replace him. Because I'm trying to appease the fans who are coming to see that stuff, but I'm also
Right.
trying not to sound like a total imposter. Um, and you mentioned Billy Sheehan. I didn't replace Billy. I joined Billy.
Oh, I see. I
Yeah.
misunderstood that. That
And,
must have been great to get to play with Billy then.
yeah, the greatest learning experience in the world. The hardest thing to do when you were playing in that band was concentrate on what you do because you're always looking over at what Billy's doing, going, how the hell is he doing that? You know?
Yeah.
But it's neat to talk about that because I literally a month ago just put tracks on 2 Talus songs. I did the Live Speed on Ice album, but we
Right.
never did a studio album. Now Billy's got another version of Talus together, which includes the original drummer and uh, and singer from when I was in the band. But I'm out here and they've got a guitar player back there. But they wanted to do 2 of the songs I'd written for the original album
Oh,
back
cool.
in the
Okay.
day. And they asked if they did them, would I play on them? So
Yeah.
I was more than honored to. And
Sure.
I haven't heard the mixes yet. I know what I laid down. It sounded pretty cool, so I'm really excited to hear that.
Yeah. Oh no, that'll be great. I didn't even realize that that he was working on something new with Talus. The last thing I want to ask you about is I don't quite know the capacity in which you worked with him. I don't know if you were in the video, just played on the album, but
I
you.
lost your audio
Oh,
on
okay.
after
Uh, can you
capacity.
hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to ask you about, I'm not quite sure what capacity you worked with Sam Kinison, but did you do the video for Wild Thing, the album? What exactly was your involvement? Because I saw a picture of you on stage with him,
Oh yeah,
and
no. Well, first off, we were good friends.
yeah.
I was unfortunately out of town on the road when they did Wild Thing, or I would
Oh,
have
I
wound
see.
up there as well. But basically, Sam had a round table of musicians that he would hire to do his shows.
Yeah,
And depending on who was around and where the show was, it would change from time to time. But I got to do more than my fair share of shows with him, and it was never a boring experience. Not once, not
yeah.
even for a tenth of a second.
That's what it always sounds like. It's funny. I've worked for a long time with the comedian Dennis Miller, and he knew Sam way back, and he was talking about how one of his favorite moments was Sam walked in and he was like, "Oh, Dennis, I'd like to introduce you to Seika, who of course was like one of the biggest like porn stars in the world at that time, and it's just like like you said, never a dull moment with Sam."
Absolutely never a dull moment. But
Yeah.
the one thing, you know how Hollywood could be. You could be at the Rainbow, but your best friend, if they're sitting at a table with somebody who's more important than you, sometimes they don't say hello.
Sure.
Sam could be sitting with the president. If you walked in, he'd jump up and down. Hey, he'd be friendly and announce you as the greatest guitar player who ever lived. And
Oh, that's great.
he was just a great guy. So
Yeah, that's what you always hear about him, and yeah, I mean, just his stage persona alone was truly something very unique that I don't think we'll ever see anything similar to
no,
that
well,
again.
I mean, I feel the same way about that I do about a lot of music, in that what he was doing. Yeah, it was funny, and yeah, there's comedy routines, but man, it was all real. I mean, he meant, it all came from a real place. He was, wh- whereas, a lot of other comedy could be considered more contrived for me. It just seemed like, Sam's stuff about religion. I mean, he was a preacher. He knew what he was talking about when he was making fun of it. He wasn't just making fun.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that was always the funniest stuff was
Yeah.
the anything dealing with religion and all that. Well, Mitch, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope that at some point before we know it, I am able to see the band live. And if there's 1,100 empty seats, I think it'll only be for the best reasons.
Well, and if there are, I will make sure you get the one that's 100 yards away.
That's perfect. I
It's got-
appreciate that. The song we're talking about, "A Very Merry Christmas," is out there, but obviously the Music Box album. What's the best place for people? Just Google Mitch Perry Project.
Yeah, if you go to mitchperry.com,
Hmm.
it'll have everything that you need to see or get. You go to our YouTube channel, which is Mitch Perry Group. The songs, Music Box, and all that's available on all the downloads, and you can get the hard stuff off our website. And yeah, we're going to be putting up the Christmas song there as well. I don't think that's gone up quite yet because
Well,
we're a little late off the mark on getting everything done, but we still
there's
wanted to share it with everyone so
there's
they got to.
yeah, there's only a few more shopping days, so you want to get it out there for sure.
Exactly, yes. So
Well, Mitch, it's like I said, it's always great to talk to you. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks again.
Likewise, thanks for having me, and have a happy holidays, and we'll see you
And
soon.
happy New Year, because it has to be better than this one.
Oh, man, that is the one thing I mean, you don't have to be Nostradamus to say 2021's going to get
It's
better.
gonna definitely be better.
It's
All
got to be
right.
better.
Thanks again, Mitch.
Take care.
You too. Bye.